Hey everyone! Will.i.am. Hey, let me turn off my music here real quick. Hey everybody, Will.i.am, the BowTie Sober Guy, coming to you live tonight, Saturday night, here in the lovely city of Denver, Colorado. We had some snow today, so it's actually very pretty out, but it's not very nice to drive. I actually just got back, but glad to be joining you guys tonight and having you join me. Excited to share what I want to go talk about tonight. Our next letter in the acrostic BowTie Living in BowTie, and of course it's W, and so I'm excited to share that with you. Hi Yvette, welcome back, glad to see ya. We have Minnesota snow here, not quite, but we do have some snow. We got, 4 or 5 inches here at home, I'm guessing today, so and I apologize again, I'm still fighting this crappy cold that I have, and so hopefully I can get through this and without any issues, but I will apologize ahead of time. So glad you guys are here, and I'm excited to share with you what we're going to talk about tonight, which is W, the letter W in BowTie. And in my recovery journey, what the letter W stands for is witness. And it's really a witness to your life and kind of a reflection. Before I jump into that, I do want to remind everybody what we went over the last couple nights. We started with B, of course, and that was looking at our beliefs. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight, too, when it comes to the W and witness. But what are our beliefs? What do we carry with us? What has been instilled in us? What can we change? Do we choose to change? Sorry, I'm going to turn off my volume there. And that kind of thing. And then last night, we talked about openness. And that really goes to, are we open to change? Do we want to? Do we want to be able to change? Do we want to grow? Do we want to look at those beliefs and determine which ones are limiting and which ones are empowering? And then are we truly opening to asking God to come into our hearts and our lives and really help us to move past those things? And tonight is going to be, again, W for witness. And witness is really a witness of your life. And it's really looking at reflecting back on all the things that have happened, whether they're events, whether they're circumstances, whether they're situations that you've been in. Maybe it's decisions that you've made. Maybe it's decisions that you didn't make. Maybe something came up and rather than making a decision, you didn't make that decision. But really looking at our past, because one of the things that I have found out was there's a lot of things in my past that really were instrumental in creating the life that I have today. And luckily I've been able to change some of those things and deal with those things, and through the help of God, been able to remove some of those bad behaviors and bad beliefs and things that I had in the past, but I had to recognize those, and I had to go through this process of reflection and really looking back and trying to figure out what are those things, how did they impact me. I'll share here in a little bit about an experience that I shared the other night on another video about an experience that I had with my mom at her spirit, actually, because she's passed. But looking at how those things and this healing process and this growing process that we get a chance to go through, because really when we look at our past, a lot of it has shaped who we have become. And some of those were choices that we made, some of those were choices that were made for us. And again, like I said, some of them were decisions that we made or didn't make. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. And the thing that I want to really make sure everybody understands is this process, this W, and really going through and looking at your past takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of vulnerability. And when we get vulnerable, we have to find that courage. We have to find the courage to really look at those things and determine if they had an impact on our lives or in our lives. And was it positive? Was it negative? Whatever it might have been. And so really just, taking the time to look back and reflect and finding that courage to dive into what that might be and what that might look like. And The thing about courage is I love this. There's a definition of courage that a lot of people think that there's an absence of fear in courage. And that's really what courage means. And that is not what it means to me. And really what it means to me is it's not the absence of fear, but it's actually facing fear head on. So, there's all kinds of stories out there about people that went into battle and they were courageous. Well, really, they were still fearful, but they faced that fear. And that's really what courage is. It's looking at these things that maybe we're afraid to look at. We're trying not to bring those into the light. And instead of really looking at them and shining the light on them, we try to keep them buried deep down inside. And so this part of this process is really about being courageous and looking at those things. And it's okay to look at them. Again, that's what courage really, really means, is taking those fears that we might have and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to stare that fear straight in the face. And I'm going to really determine if that is helpful to me or not. There are times that fear is very helpful. It's really innate within us, and we're all born with it. We all have a sense of fear, but it's unhealthy fear that can keep us from achieving the things that we want to achieve. And so those are the things that we want to look at when we're really looking at our lives and where we're at today, and then where we want to go, because that's really what BowTie living is. It's again, just to remind you, it's about transforming those life's knots, and those life's knots are those beliefs, those fears, those resentments, the past things that we have that we hang on to in our lives that keep us from really achieving what we want to achieve. And that's what's exciting when we get to work through this. So this part, the W, the witness, is truly a very important part of the recovery journey and your healing journey and this transformation that you can have in your life. And when I say transformation in your life, it's really in all kinds of areas in your life. It might be in your career. One of the big things for me was in my relationships, specifically with my family, and healing those relationships, getting through that, and actually growing closer as a family. And that has been amazing. But it's also relationships with friends, relationships with all kinds of people, and just how we are able to take all of these things and create a life that is filled still with knots, and those knots we'll always have, but being able to get around those and transform and untie and unravel and find out what those are. And again, witness is a really big step in that, because what we're going to do is we're going to really unpack all the things that have happened in our lives. And so what I want you to do is kind of think of this as an exercise where one of the things that I had done, and you won't be able to see it, but I'll kind of share it with you just so you can kind of see, is a timeline. And this is a very interesting experience here where, again, you can't really see that much there because it's kind of light, but it's just a timeline. And I recently did this, and it was a timeline that I looked at from basically my first conscious memory, from when I was a young kid, tiny little kid, toddler, up to the time and date that I actually did this. And, so get yourself a big piece of paper and you're going to create that timeline. It's really, really simple. All you're going to do is you're going to plot that timeline. And then this is really where the important things start happening is looking back, and looking back at your life and look at those significant events, those significant decisions, activities. Maybe it was a move. Maybe it was a job. Maybe it was a divorce. Your parents were divorced. Maybe it was your own divorce. Maybe it was, there were certain things, maybe something happened in high school or as a young kid or in college, or really looking back and trying to find those significant events that you feel were important and had an impact in your life. And they're not just events that you want to look at, but those activities, or was there something that happened in your life that created some sort of a fear that you have? Or maybe there was an event that happened that was completely out of your control. I'll share something that happened to me a little more than 2 years ago, and we're talking about a significant event, and this was, I had a very severe work injury, and I fell, and I actually ended up falling on some metal, and that metal sliced right through my wrist all the way to my bone. And, it was pretty scary because I cut both my arteries, my nerves and tendons as well. But I was truly bleeding out. And it was a pretty scary ordeal. And it was a very significant event in my life. And it just happened probably about 2.5 years ago, I guess. May 17th of 2017. I remember the date very well. But those kinds of things. And because those have an impact on us. There were other significant events. My sobriety date is a very significant event. November 15th of 2017. 2017 was a big year. But really putting that, and also going all the way back to your childhood, were there things that happened? One of the things that I wrote on my list that was interesting was my first, true love, so to speak. I don't know, I think I was 13 or 14 years old. It ended. Well, okay. I look back and I was only 13 or 14, but you know what? I still remember it, which means it had significance in my life. And so we want to look at those things and we want to plot those on the graph. And what I would ask that you do is on that graph, not only the negative things, but also the really positive things. Like I had mentioned, my day of sobriety. That's a very positive thing. And when you put those on your graph, you're going to put those above or below the line. So above the line is going to be positive events, and then on the bottom of the line is going to be any negative events or situations or things that arose in your life. And you're going to plot those. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. But what I want you to think about when you're doing that is actually giving them significance. If it was a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being up here and 10 being down here, what significance did that have in your life? And there may have been things that happened that maybe are only a 2 or a 3 in far as significance. But, my accident, that was a pretty significant thing. And so that actually rated higher or higher on the number, and so it was more like a 7 or an 8 as far as the level of significance. And really plot those out, because what we're trying to do is, number one, see if there's any patterns, which I'm going to bet I actually found some things when I did this that were some patterns and some things that really helped me in kind of reflecting back on there. But we're also going to use that as a tool to look and see what kind of character, whether they're defects or assets that are patterns. Because a lot of times when we go through this process of witnessing our life, we don't put it all together until we start to really look at it as a whole. We may look at singular events and they don't have a whole lot of meaning, but as soon as you start putting them all down, you may see a lot of different patterns that pop up. And I had mentioned the words character defects and character assets, because really the purpose of this part of the process, the W and the witness, is almost think of it like an inventory of your life. And an inventory is something that businesses do all the time. Again, we're coming up to the end of a year, and there's a lot of reflection that people go through, and then they put together their goals and New Year's resolutions and those kinds of things. But it's really about reflecting and looking back at what happened in the last year. And what I'm asking you to do in this process is look at your whole life. Look at the things that have happened that have actually created who you are today. And you're going to be able to find a lot of commonalities, I bet, in these different events and circumstances and decisions that have come up in your life. And so you're going to plot all of those things. And also look at that while you're doing that exercise and trying to figure out what you want to put on there, is maybe there are some resentments that you have, maybe there's some fear that you have, maybe there are some things that you're really angry about that happened to you or didn't happen to you, or maybe there's individuals that you haven't been able to forgive for whatever happened. Plot those things on there as well, because these are all significant events that have really played into who you are today. It's not a bad thing. Again, this is just a reflective exercise to really get in and see if there's some commonalities. Are there some things that maybe all of a sudden pop up? Again, one of the things that I've shared in the videos is how much I realized how selfish and self-centered I was in a lot of the things I did. And I've had to unravel that, again, untying life's knots, and unravel that and figure out why. What made me that way, and what are the things that I can do and have done to overcome that and change that, and not come into this world selfish and self-centered, self-seeking, and those kinds of things. And it's through this process that I'm sharing with you that I've been able to do that. And so it's really exciting and fun to be able to do this. And I was actually sharing earlier tonight with some folks about me going through this process the very first time I went through this process. And when I looked at this inventory type thing of my life, I was really scared. I had a lot of apprehension, but I was also very excited, and I had some energy that I thought, you know what? I think there's going to be some real healing here and some real kind of aha moments. And there was both. There was fear, and there was also some aha moments and some great moments where I was able to be courageous and work through these things and be able to find some of these character defects, character assets that I actually have and had for a long time in my life. And that's really the purpose of this exercise, is to look and see, okay, what is it? What do I carry with me that maybe I don't like, it goes back to those beliefs, right? What do I have that is limiting me, but also what do I have that's empowering me? Because that's really what we want to look at is how do we change and transform those limiting ones and those behaviors and those patterns that we've developed over time, and how do we change those into something that is empowering? And that's what this process really teaches us to do. But we can't do it until we identify what those are. And that's really what witness is all about. And one of the great kind of analogies that I love to use when it comes to this is, think of your life kind of like an onion. And I'm going to go to the spiritual part of this as well, and the God-centered part of my life, and what I've learned in this journey is that at my core, I actually have a healthy spirit. But because of the world we live in, because we're in a sinful world, because this is what we have to live with, we have all these things that pile on like an onion. And I want to get back to that core, that healthy spirit, that healthy connection with God. And I have to peel away all those different things, all those resentments, all those fears, all those things that keep me from having that healthy spirit and that connection with God, and also with other people. And when I do that and continue to do that, and it's an evolution for me. It continues every single day. I get to learn, and I love that word, I get to learn, or words, I get to learn. Chuck, what's up, brother? Man, I haven't talked to you for a long time. Thanks for jumping on, man. I miss you guys out there in the old Carolinas. You probably have better weather than we do here. But glad you decided to jump on and join me. So, but going back to the whole onion thing, and we get to have this opportunity now to really go through and peel those layers off. And why I love to use the idea of an onion is, what happens when you peel an onion? What do? We cry, right? And I know it's not for an emotional reason or anything like that, but that's one of the things that I learned in this process as well, is that, it's okay to cry. It's okay to have those emotions, have those feelings, have those things surface that come up, because you know what that means? That means that I'm getting closer to that healthy spirit, because I can see those things and I can experience them. And once I do that and I have that awareness, now I get to work on them and change them. Now I get to do something about them. And that all comes through the work with God and with His Holy Spirit and with the things that He has shown to me. But I have to take the work. I have to start peeling and peeling and peeling and peeling. And each layer gets me closer and closer and closer and closer to that. So the thing in this process that's important is I use the word vulnerability and being vulnerable. And that's really hard today. We're in a society where, everything on the outside has to look so good. And what's interesting about that is how many people out there on the inside don't look like their outsides. And it would be very interesting. Actually, a couple of months ago, I had this conversation with a friend of mine. But think about what would happen if we all walked around in our world and our internal thoughts actually popped up like thought bubbles. You know how they have bubbles in cartoons and all those things where they pop up. And what would our world look like if we had those thought bubbles that we could see from ourselves, but also from others? Because that's the truth, and I think that's the truth that we want to get to, is what is going on in here that doesn't come out, that a lot of times we may not even let us feel. A lot of times we bury that so deep that we don't even want to feel it until we're by ourselves and we're all alone, and then we let it feel. We let ourselves feel. But what if we had thought bubbles? Maybe I should start doing thought bubbles on my Facebook Live. That'd be kind of interesting. But it would be a very different world. I saw a podcast, it was a YouTube video. It was a TED Talk of this woman. She made a statement, and I had no idea. I might actually have it written down right here. And she's a well-known psychologist, psychiatrist. I don't have it right here at my fingertips, but she made a quote, and she said, and if I'm going to try to remember the numbers right, but she said that unhealthy thoughts and depression I thought it was in this piece of paper. I don't have it. But unhealthy thoughts and depression are actually now the number one leading cause of illness and people being out of work. And I wish I could remember exactly what that was, because it was really, really powerful. But there was more people affected by these negative emotions than are affected with cancer, heart disease, and what was the other one? There was another one. But it's pretty crazy. It's absolutely crazy when you think about, and again, that goes back to the whole thought bubbles, right? If we truly were vulnerable and real, what would we say about what we think? That's what this part of this process of BowTie living is all about. And the W is really getting to the root of all those things. Let's find out let's peel that onion back. Let's get back to that healthy spirit, that healthy connection with ourselves, our healthy connection with God. And, I think if enough people do that, we're going to change the world. I really do. And I know that's kind of a bold statement, but you know what? I think that there's an opportunity. I think we're in a time in our country, in our world, that people are looking for something. And, whether it's this or something else, it doesn't matter. But I think that if we can all really start peeling that onion back and really looking at who we are and becoming who we were really meant to be, and being real on the outside as well as the inside, I think that we can make pretty significant changes in our society and in our world. And that's pretty exciting. I know I'm just one guy, but you know what? If I can do it for myself and help one other person, then that's awesome, because that's one more person closer to us getting there. So, but that kind of is the whole W. It's really about, going back and reflecting and witnessing what has happened in your life, and what are those things that have made you who you are, both good and bad. It don't have to concentrate on all the negative, because you know what, there's a lot of good things that have happened. It's really interesting. I mentioned my accident that I had 2.5 years ago, and even in that, where I could have died. Even in that, I found some good. There was some good that came out of that. Some things that I was able to do because the accident happened, that I was able to do in my life that I wouldn't have been able to do had that not happened. And so, we want to look at both the good and the bad. And we also we will explore more about that, about how do we look at the bad and really see the good as kind of the silver lining that we look for. Because, I believe that if we focus on the silver linings and not on the dark clouds, that life looks very different. And that's pretty exciting. So that's a little bit on witness and putting together your life inventory and looking at kind of finding any of those patterns out there. Tomorrow we'll be looking at T, and T is all about testifying the truth. And this is actually really important too, because we're unraveling a lot of all those things right now, and some of those beliefs are not true. They're lies that we've told ourselves or other people have told us that we believed. And so we're going to talk about that tomorrow night. And so it's going to be to testify to the truth. But before I leave you, because I forgot at the very beginning, and I did the Celestial Nights, as I had a couple quotes that I wanted to share with everybody. And I will share, I have 4 of them on my screen behind me, but I'm only going to share 2 of them. And one of them is Kurt Cobain, who's not with us, I don't think anymore, but he had a great quote. And for me, it's all about celebrating our uniqueness. And we are unique. We may have similar stories, we may have things that are in common, but in the end, we are all unique. And he says, they laugh at me because I'm different. I laugh at them because they're all the same. So very interesting. And I love to be unique. I love to be different. I wear a bow tie, right? It's a little different. And the second one is a quote that I actually came up with. And it helps me to keep grounded in moving forward and grounded in taking the next right action. And it's we can all make excuses. But it's our reasons that create results. So I ask, what are your reasons? Because the reasons take away all excuses. So with that, I'm going to sign off tonight. I want to thank you again for all joining me on this Saturday evening, and I look forward to reaching out, and we'll go through T for Testify to the Truth tomorrow night. Have a great night, everybody. Peace out.